believe on the new version resource. Yes, on the new version resource page, if you look along the right side, back in 2011, one of our former employees, Mary Lou Turnbull, she was one of our senior trainers, very knowledgeable. She ended up going into forensic accounting and starting her own accounting firm called Steeple Accounting. I think she moved to Florida now as well. But she recorded this webinar, or not a webinar, just a video that probably goes into a lot more detail than I will today. We only have 20 minutes. But there's a very, very good webinar or video, I guess it is a webinar, it says right there, that Mary Lou recorded back in 2011. The balance sheet, treasurer's report, and fund activity report, while Church Windows has had a lot of changes and membership has had a lot of changes, those reports really have not changed a lot since Mary Lou did that recording back in 2011. Well, actually, this one's, 2011, July 12th, 2011. So if you want something that might go a little more in depth than what I'm going to show you today, you might want to take a look at there's 4 parts to this webinar, but Mary Lou goes over that probably in a lot more detail than I will today. All right, let me go ahead and close the Church Windows website. I already have accounting open. I open it just by, on my opening screen, clicking on the word accounting. And we're going to go ahead and look at 3 of the most commonly used reports. A lot of times new people to Church Windows and the accounting module will ask, what do I need for meetings? We'll ask the committee, ask people at the meeting what they would like to see. If you're not sure, we recommend these 3 reports to start out, and then they could, give you more details. To access reports, we can click on, I typically on phone tell people to click on Reports Export along the top, and then you can click on any of the buttons up here to choose specific single reports. You also can access reports right in the middle by clicking on Reports. And that brings up the multiple reports where you can pop different reports over to the right side by just clicking on them and moving them over. And then you can save that report grouping to come in and just ask for that saved report group and print those out one right after the other. But either route takes you to the same reports. Again, I prefer going up to the top because I'm going to do these one at a time. And let's go ahead and look first at the balance sheet. So I'm going to click on balance sheet, and that opens up the balance sheet options. You'll see each of these reports, it opens you usually up to an options tab where you'll have different things you can select. We'll also see on these reports some tabs that are the same for all the reports. The custom account groups tab, detail, and fonts. So let me go back to options. We'll talk about each of these with the balance sheet, but then for the other 2 reports, I'll show you they're the same on all the different reports. So we're not going to go into a lot of detail on each report after we look at them once for the balance sheet. Now the balance sheet, this report shows your assets compared to the liabilities and fund balances. In Church Windows, to be in balance, your assets, the number 1 accounts, are equal to your liabilities, the number 2 accounts and your vendors, plus your fund or number 3 accounts. Of most of the reports, this one does apply to a single point in time instead of a period of time. And if you're following along looking in the book, top of page 23 does mention that formula I just said. Assets, to be in balance, your total assets are equal to your total liabilities plus your total fund balances. Now, if you're familiar with the older financial module, that module you could get out of balance. But in accounting, something about the programming, it will not let you be out of balance. So it's rare or almost never, unless there's an error or bug, it's rare that I ever see a balance sheet where the assets aren't equal to liabilities plus fund balances. So on the options tab, notice we can choose different years. You don't have to go into a specific year to print a report from that year. If I wanted to change something in a prior year, I'd have to go into that year. But on all the reports, I have the option to print that report from a prior year if I'd like. We'll stick with 2016. A lot of reports will have and include accounts with 0 balance where you can check off to see those or not see those. With the balance sheet, we have the option to choose to see these balances as of a specific month, or we can ask for a specific through a specific date. Also, we can ask to see a monthly comparative and an annual comparative, and that will change exactly what columns print on the report. And we also have the option to truncate the cents or drop those off. Bottom left, we can choose the starting page number it puts on the page. This is more common. Maybe you're going to print these and have a cover letter in front or some introductory information. We could change that to a different page number and then have our introductory information, when we're handing all that out in a packet maybe. Then we have the option to show the long date and time as well. Let's look at the different tabs across here. Custom account group, we're not going to go into creating those, but if you ever want to see specific accounts on a report, you can create a custom account group of just the accounts you want. And then if I were to check off one of these here, then I would only see the accounts in that grouping. And you'll see when we look at the other two reports, we have the same custom account groups available no matter what report we select. Now, if we have a grouping that's just our income and expense accounts, that would be kind of pointless to choose on a balance sheet that only shows our 1, 2, and 3 accounts. If we click on columns, columns allows us to choose exactly what columns are on our reports and what order they're in, and we can also change the size of each column as well. The right side or visible columns, that means this is what's going to be on the report. We can move these back and forth. I'm going to leave these as is because this is typically a balance sheet. You usually show the accounts, the name and number, the beginning balance for those, and then the year-to-date balance. Let's click on now the Detail tab. Here we could opt to, if we open all these pluses up, we see all our different subtotals. Here we also see this Memorial Fund balance is a parent account with sub-accounts under it, same for pass-throughs. If we just want to see the subtotal total rather than all the accounts listed in that subtotal, then we could uncheck Detail, and then it's just going to show us subtotals rather than showing us all the accounts as well. Let's look at everything for now though. Fonts, our last tab, we can change the font. Click here, I'll let you see. You can choose the font type, the style, the size, whether it's underlined or bolded, some different things you can affect for the font. And we can do that for the header, the column headings, or the body text. So you can change those for those different areas. And if you've gone in and changed those from what they were set at when you originally received the program, clicking Reset to Default, if I go in here and change my header to maybe 18, Reset to Default, we'll just change that back to the original settings of the program. Also on all the reports, lower right, we can click the Export button, and we could export this report if we liked. The default, if I just click Export Document, is to export as a PDF. However, I can click this little arrow and choose different formats to export this as. Or I can send via email, and first when you send via email, it prompts you to choose first it's a PDF automatically, or I can choose the format by clicking the little arrow, but it will prompt you to save the file, and then if you use Outlook or Outlook Express, it will open the email with it attached. If you use something you have to log into, then I would save the file and then attach it to your actual email. All right, with everything set to the defaults that come up when I go into the balance sheet, let's just go ahead and click Print. And let's maximize this so everybody can see it a little better. This shows us, again, our assets or 1 accounts, followed by our liability or number 2 accounts, and then finally our number 3 fund accounts. And again, to see if we're in balance, our total asset amount, we see beginning balance and year-to-date column. That dollar amount should match. Let me get my clicking tool back on my second screen. Should match at the very bottom our total liabilities and fund balances line at the very end, and it does. So we can see we are in balance. Now also on this report you can do a monthly comparative or an annual comparative, and watch, if I click on columns, remember we're only showing 4 right now. If I go back and choose monthly comparative, then it adds some different columns looking at the previous period, meaning the previous month, amount difference between those, and then a percentage difference. So the monthly comparative puts some totals on, or some columns on there automatically for you. And here we could probably, let me change this to landscape. Go up to page setup, and if I choose landscape, I can see all my columns now. But we can see the year-to-date balance, the previous period, meaning September, because we're looking at October, and then the difference, the amount difference, and percent difference for those. So that's a nice way to compare between the months. And last, we have an annual comparative where, if I choose that, it puts some different columns on there, some yearly columns, yearly comparison columns. If I print that, notice it held my change of landscape, similar to monthly, but instead of monthly totals, we're seeing the amount difference year to date versus the previous year's balance, and then a percentage as well. Now, I talk so much, so let me go ahead. That's our balance sheet. Let's look at the second report. That is also under the financial button, so reports, export, financial, and then let's look at, well, actually, I'm going to go in the order the book is going. The next thing on page 23 of the workbook is the treasurer's report. Often that's called your profit loss. It just looks at your income, the number 4 accounts, and your expense, number 5 accounts. Here again, we can choose different accounting years. We can include accounts with a 0 balance. If we don't want to see those, we can uncheck here. Something a little different here, if we only want to see accounts that are linked to a certain fund, we can ask for that fund. I'm going to leave that blank for now. For the period, we can look at a particular month, or we can't look through a specific date like on the balance sheet. We can look at different quarters. So we have all of the 4 quarters listed that we could look at. This is a report if you want to see budget items. This has a lot of different budget columns. If you're doing that, showing budget columns, you might want to have it display an asterisk for over budget items, and truncating cents is available as well. Custom account group, notice that is the same. Detail is a little different because it's showing my income and expense accounts, but it works the same way. Let's go ahead, and on this, well, let me show you real quick everything, and then I'll show you what it looks like without the detail. Same for fonts. We have the same options available there. Let me go ahead and click print. And here you can see, I just left it at the default columns that we had on the report, but we first see all of our income accounts, and then it moves on to show all of our expense accounts. And then at the bottom, a difference between those. Now let's look. If I were to just ask for maybe my memorial fund and click print, I have a much shorter report because this is only going to show me the 4 accounts and the 5 accounts that are specifically linked to that memorial fund. So you can print a treasurer's report just for specific funds, income, and expense accounts. Also wanted to show you real quick here, what if I uncheck total income and total expenses or detail? If I click print now, then all I'm seeing is my subtotals. It's not showing me the detail of the accounts within those. It's just showing total general fund, total building fund, and so on. So here I'm just getting my subtotals rather than all the accounts within those. Excuse me. All right, let's move on. I could talk for days, but we only have another minute or 2 left. So let's look at, if we move on to the fund activity report. And this is shown briefly at the bottom of page 25. The fund activity report gives you a good picture of the total for a specific fund, a 3 account, and then the activity posted directly to that fund. Then it will move on and show the details of the income and expense accounts linked to that. Just like the other 2 reports, we can choose any of the accounting years we like. Defaults to look at detailed, and we can ask for it through a specific date. We can include accounts with zero balance and truncate cents, just like the others. Columns. The columns will change based on whether I choose consolidated or detailed. Notice with consolidated, I have some different columns available. Fonts works the same as the other two reports. Something a little different here, though, we have a Funds tab. If you only want to see a specific fund or a different mix of funds, we could unselect all, and then we could just move over the different funds we'd like to see on the report. I'm going to go ahead and move them all over, and let's quickly take a look at the detailed fund activity report. If I click print, that brings it up, and it first shows my general operating fund and its beginning balance. Then we see all the income accounts, the current activity and year-to-date balance are the columns I'm showing. It moves on and shows all the expense accounts that are linked to my general fund. Once it's done with the general fund and its account, it moves on to my next fund, my building fund, and shows the income and expense accounts for that, and so on. Just moves through all the different funds. Let's really quick look at, we can look at consolidated for a specific month, or we can do consolidated year to date. So let's look at the selected month. So here, if we look at the consolidated month for the month of October, make it a little bigger here. This shows the fund, the beginning balance, the total receipts, disbursements, any transfers or journal entries, and then the end balance. Let me pick a different month. We don't have a lot in October, obviously, so let's look at January. Oh, don't have a lot of activity going on at all, but gives you a good picture, consolidated picture of what went in and out of those different accounts and the totals of what went in and out. You could also run that year to date through a specific date rather than for just a month. And again, very similar, but this is year to date rather than for a specific month, and it shows same thing, beginning balance, the receipts, disbursements, transfers, and the end balance. And I apologize, I've gone over by 2 minutes. Again, really quickly showed you those three reports. If you're not sure what you need for first meeting, then I recommend printing these. Then ask the committees what they'd like to see different on those reports. If you'd like more detail on those reports, again, if you look on our website, under training, under support, and we go to new version resources, along the right side, we have a much longer webinar that was recorded back in 2011 by Mary Lou. But again, not a lot has changed on these reports. You might see some different things on the tabs or the columns function a little differently, but the reports are essentially the same. And Mary Lou goes into a lot more detail than we can go into in just 20 minutes. So let me go ahead and get my clicking tool back. That's all I wanted to show you for the reports. Again, it was the balance sheet, treasurer's report, and fund activity report. And all of those are available under the financial button. And let me go ahead and look. I have a few questions here. Someone asked, can I change the treasurer's report so I can see all of the account detail but no subtotals? Unfortunately, no. You can ask on the details to not see the detail of the accounts, but there is no way to not show subtotals. Those, I can certainly add that as a suggestion. You could export this report out if you like, and then remove those subtotal lines. But currently, this report does show all of the income and expense and subtotals, and there's no way to, show the accounts but not show these subtotals as well. Someone asked, is there a way to center the balance sheet on the page? Not sure. Let me take a look at that. If we go to balance sheet and click print, right now we're looking at it landscape, so it's not as centered. If I move back to portrait and say okay, it's relatively centered. You can move your margin over if you like, and that would bump it over a little more. but there is no tool to just say center. It's left justified, so it will line up with your left margin, but you could move that margin over to change, to move it over, make it move over to the right more. Someone asked, I have a lot of old custom account groups listed in my tab. Is there a way to delete some of those? Sure. If you go to the custom account groups, you can click the plus down at the bottom, and that will bring up the custom account group screen. Upper right, you choose the custom account group you want to delete, and then hit the minus sign at the end of that line, and that will ask, are you sure you want to delete that group? That doesn't delete accounts. This is simply saying, I want this account, this account, this account, all to be in this custom group I call missions. So if I just delete this, now we only have one custom account group, but those accounts still exist. I just no longer have that grouping I created to show on reports. All right, more questions. I'm glad I was able to keep up with them since we didn't have a question answerer during the webinar. But again, we wanted to make sure we have some text on the phone during lunchtime. And you're welcome. Someone said thank you. Very welcome. Again, this material is in the Accounting 201 workbook, pages 22 through 25. Also, when you're in the program, if you hit the F1 key, that will bring up the Church Windows help files that tell you if there is a help file specifically about that screen you're on. When you hit F1, it takes you right to that topic. So that might be helpful as well if you didn't want to purchase workbooks. But again, those are available on our website. Along the left, if you click on workbooks under training, that takes you to the page with all the different workbooks that are available for the different modules of Church Windows. All right. Are there any other questions? If you're in the middle of typing, you might want to hit enter so I don't end the webinar while you are still typing your question. And then hit enter and then finish typing the rest. But if there are no other questions, then I'll go ahead and end the webinar for today and go do some calls and then take my lunch at 2. All right, well, I'm not seeing any questions coming in, so I'm going to go ahead and end our webinar. Again, thanks so much for attending. Take a look at the webinar page. If you look under training, click on free online webinars. That takes you to the page that shows all the different webinars. We have different topics throughout the month, and these are all free. So sign up for as many as you'd like. All right, everybody have a great day. Thanks so much for attending, and I'm sure I'll talk to you on the phone in the future. If a question comes up later, definitely give us a call, and we can answer your question on the phone or email us. Thanks. Have a great day. Bye.